back. We're all good to start. The topic is cultural competence in global teams, navigating cross-cultural. I'd like to take this opportunity to invite the panelists on stage to start with Ms. Sahana Shetty, Global People Leader, London Stock Exchange Group. Sahana Shetty has over 23 years of experience in the people function, leading global organizations and talent growth by delivering strategic transformative outcomes. A very, very warm welcome to you, ma'am. Joining her, we have Mr. Jacob George, HR Head, Senior Director, TransUnion, with 2 decades of HR expertise in the technology, banking, finance, and manufacturing industry. Jacob has led diverse teams in global organizations across a wide range of roles. Ms. Priyanka Sharma, Head HR, Kraft Heinz India. Driven HR professional with 18 plus years of experience in human resource management assessments with reputed organizations across different sectors. Ms. Meenalochini Kumar, SVP Talent Management and Development, ex-Northern Trust. With over 2 decades of experience and expertise are in the areas such as executive leadership development, L&D, and many more. So audience, for all the panelists on stage, is Neha Aluwalia, Chief Human Resource Officer, India and South Asia region, Hitachi Energy India. HR professional with global, regional and local experience at leadership level. A very, very warm welcome to all the panelists, and I would like to invite the moderator, Mr. Srinivasa Bharti, Managing Director and CEO, Andhra Nallin, E-Systems Limited. A very, very warm welcome. They're one of our partners. Mr. Srinivasa Bharati, please come on stage, sir. With extensive experience in retail, healthcare, and manufacturing, Srinivasa actively supports SMEs in scaling profitability. It contributes to the TAB India, offering business coaching, and works with Group Infinite on consulting and business planning for owner-managed businesses. With that, over to Mr. Srinivasa Bharati. Everyone, please take your seats.
So we have 30 minutes. So thank you. So before we start, I think I just met all the panelists who have been, I think, veterans in the space for a long time. I'm possibly the only business guy around. I don't know, is there any business person here? Okay, so we just finished our month number, so I'm a bit relaxed today. Okay. So looking at the kind of experience that we have on the panel, I think we'll kind of jump into the topic straight away. Our topic is about cultural competence in global teams. So I know culture plays a huge role in the way teams evolve and companies perform, right? I think we talk about it all the time, but then not much action is generally seen on the ground. So I'm going to start off with some insightful questions about, first of all, how do we understand culture? I mean, I know in management books, generally we talk about culture. We say, this is the way we do things here, right? That's it. And then what does here mean in today's world? And what does the way we do things mean in today's world? I think that in the potpourri of the global kind of journey that companies have today, especially among the GCCs, I think it holds a huge contextual importance, isn't it? So to start off with, I think we need to understand how do we recognize and understand cultural differences that actually occur among team dynamics in a GCC context. So I'm going to actually put that to, I think, the only male person first, Jacob. It's not ladies first this time. A bit of a bias from me. But then, I think you will get the chance. Reverse bias. Yeah.
Am I audible? Yeah. Okay. First and foremost, thank you for saying whoever is, okay. I think you've just set the stage for defining culture. I'll just say that, right? Because I think culture is a set of characteristics, said or unsaid, which are exhibited by certain people who may or may not belong to it, and I think it's very wrongly understood as just cultural, which is because of geography or region. I think it's also because of being a part of a certain function. Like I think finance people have a certain culture, of doing things. You know, they will have a more attention to detail, and HR people, or if you look at somebody who's doing Competence vis-a-vis somebody who's done employee engagement all their life, I think culturally the outlook of doing things is very different. So I don't think we have to restrict culture to a geography zone, but I think we have to look at it holistically as shared characteristics demonstrated by people across common similarities exhibited.
Across a workspace.
Common similarities at work, at home, or you know, all of that. So you could have common grounds on culture with various people and have non-common grounds on culture for something else. So it's not even like it's not homogeneous as well. So.
Yeah, Jacob.
Thank you, Priyanka. Actually, you helped me. I don't have to. So the other day I was, I believe, reading an article, and you've heard about intelligence quotient, you've heard about emotional quotient, and now people are talking about culture quotient, right? And especially, okay, should I repeat or? So what I was just trying to say is, you would have heard about emotional quotient, you would have heard about intelligence quotient, and now I keep reading about culture quotient. Like Priyanka said, culture is, could be geographical, could be functional, could be how you are brought up, and could be how you want to be seen in an organization. And now just add the complexity of various organizations working together, right? And in organization, various functions across geographies working together. So it plays an important role, I believe, in how we talk about it, how we bring it in the organization, and how we bring the inclusivity of all of it in the organization. So what we have seen is, and just to talk about our experience, TransUnion is my company that I represent. It is based in Chicago, grew organically, inorganically across the globe in 30 countries. And they started the capability center in India in 2018 with just 20 people, and now 4,000 people now today in 5 locations. So we have been busy in building it up, but at the same time, one question as HR leader for TransUnion Global Capability Centers, and now we have Capability Center in Africa and Costa Rica. How are we going to bring all the cultures together? So that's been a big question. So one thing I believe fundamental is listening to people, understand where they come from. Now tie it with cultural awareness sessions. Now organizations most of them have mastered it, unconscious bias sessions, right? Inclusion sessions. And then what we have done uniquely is we have created inclusion belonging groups in our organization. We have a network of 10 inclusion belonging groups across the organization. And many organizations, what I talk about, might not call it that, but they would have it in multiple snippets, and where they create culture ambassadors who talk about it. Not HR people talking about it, about 100 plus your associates who are developers, who are into various other aspects of the functions, talking about it to your new hires, talking about it how we are different but we are the same, right? So we also have values, most of the organizations do have, and we have 6 beliefs. One of the beliefs is I own it, I say what I need to say and all of that. And we try to make our new hires understand some of this so that we operate and together in a very nice way, end of the day achieving what we want to.
Excellent. I think first step is acknowledging that there are differences, right? Like you said, your differences could be from where you are, what you want to be, how you want to be seen as, and how do you actually, perform when being observed. I know, how many engineers are here? Any engineers? Any quantum engineers? No. So in quantum physics, there's something called, you do change your behavior based on who's observing you, right? By the way, even electrons are supposed to behave differently when they are being observed through a camera. Okay, and that's how humans are built. And you change your behavior when, in groups. And that's why you see, I guess, differences that arise when a person is speaking alone, when the person is with his friend or her friend, when the person is in a group of colleagues, when the person is now, discussing with people across geographies, etc. So I'm going to ask Sahana, What kind of strategies have worked for you in bridging these cultural gaps? First of all, okay, do you acknowledge there are cultural gaps that arise in the context that we are speaking in? And if so, what are those kind of strategies that have worked?
Hi everyone, I'm Sahana Shetty from London Stock Exchange Group. Now, to answer your question in terms of do I recognize how it is, at London Stock Exchange, for instance, I manage infrastructure and cloud, and we are based out of 20 plus locations. I wouldn't call it as a gap, to be honest. Let me give you an example out here, right, from an engineer perspective. And by the way, I'm an engineer too, a very proud engineer.
Fantastic.
But part of HR right now. So in terms of, just to give you an example from a culture perspective, right, one of the thoughts around culture is fail early, fail fast, but fail forward. How do you build that kind of a mindset within the teams, irrespective of which location they are based out of, is the primary question, And that could be done. I think it should be more in terms of the foundation. And the foundation comes from our first line managers. Because the top is kind of protected in some ways and the bottom are still learning. But if you look at the first line managers, the question is how much have we invested from a culture standpoint, right from a hiring them to product delivery, what is the kind of investment that we've done? And a culture we do need to build is that deep understanding and deep care for the teams. The question we need to ask ourselves is, are we hiring or, just for engineering skills? Or are we hiring leaders or managers who've got the right balance of engineering and leadership skills to take the company to 10x success? So coming to your question in terms of, irrespective of what the location is, in the end of the day, you're dealing with humans on the other side. Each one of them are coming with a set of baggages, their own emotional problems or whatsoever. And, in one of the previous organizations, I had learned this about Carol Dweck. It's move from know-it-all to learn-it-all. If you go from that perspective to different geographies with an intent to learn what the person is saying from the other side, I think that simplifies things to a lot extent.
Great, thanks.
So maybe, yes. Having worked in this space for over 2 decades exclusively on culture, it's very relevant for every organization and for every individual in an organization to be cognizant of what we are part of. So we spoke about how we do things. We spoke about why we do things. But we don't speak about how we think and why we think. I think that is the fundamental to bring about a cultural shift or a cultural mindset in an organization. We are never taught what to think of or how to think about something that the organization is doing. Why is it being done? That's never been a question. It's like culture is, we have arrived at these as our values, this is what we will do. So I remember you mentioned about inclusion. I would say more than inclusion, it also means we have to allow employees to participate in the process of understanding and exhibiting culture. It's very participative as an effort. Like Catherine talks about, it's just not about how we do things, but it's also about understanding deeper relationships, both at a personal and professional level. And I think that's the fundamental to crack global teams, to crack global understanding of how we can effectively deliver work, which is why we are there in every organization. So I think it's a lot deeper. It's not understood very well. It has spectrums, as we can see. But how do we kind of come to a midpoint about how our understanding is? The rest of it is still open for everybody's interpretation, but at least one part of it, how are we sailing together in the journey?
Great.
That's the core of defining and allowing culture to be fluid in some parts.
Thanks, Meena. So I think it's said that what you measure, can be changed, right? So how do we measure it, Neha?
Okay. Before that, I have one thought in mind.
Sure, please share.
Before when you just said about it, when I started setting up shared services GCC, what really happened was that suddenly somebody told me that, look, you don't know the culture of that place, and everybody walks in the office in Bermuda. So, and this is the culture. And
it was in Bermuda or in India?
In Bangalore.
Okay, in Bangalore.
So in Bangalore. So then they said this is how the culture is of GCCs. So, and this is all this unconscious bias that we carry from my perspective. And then what happens eventually when we set it up in a typical Swedish type of organization, then we eventually realize that the culture is just about assimilation. It's really bringing things together. The larger subset is always played by how an organization allow with open arms to, of course, allow those changes to happen. Having said that, maintain that core within the organization. So I think when I set it up, a larger thing I learned is if you protect your core, other than that, adapt to change, it eventually works.
So the question now.
Yeah, please.
How do you measure this?
From my perspective, it's not a measurable activity at all. Mm-hmm. What we need to just see is that, again, I come to the change factor. If you're allowing a bit of change to happen, still don't shift your basics, I think things work. So in culture perspective, at least from my perspective, how we comes across in Hitachi Energy, what we define and what really rules everything for us is diversity 360. So what we eventually say that diversity in everything we do, diversity in leadership, diversity in thoughts, in every single aspect, whether it's our appraisal process to our safety mechanism, everything we say diversity 360. So there we don't say numbers, but we say that in whatever possible things, starting from onboarding to an employee to an exit, we just measure with the philosophy of diversity 360, and it's very top driven. So I think these are the kinds of things we need to do, talk about it. I think you just said about that, lead it from the top, and certain times these things work rather than just measuring around stuff.
Yeah, interesting.
I would like to add in terms of measurement, because we did measure it in certain organizations. I would say direct measures are pretty difficult because it's about how we do things, and not always can we continue to map each employee as to how he or she or they are doing things, right? But you have indirect measures for understanding culture. For example, how engaged is your employee with respect to the values? Are they displaying it? Mm-hmm. Integrity as a value, for example. Mm-hmm. How many integrity breaches do you have? Though we may not talk about it in the open, we did talk about it in one of the organization without bringing out the names, to say that if this is what integrity breach looks like, then what is it as a behavior for integrity to stand tall? And it was a very powerful lesson that we shared to say we do expect this aspect from employees who work here. Likewise, when you look at core values of care, how are team conflicts happening? Is there a sense of care that the person feels? So there are indirect measures, as much as there are questionnaires, dime a dozen to measure culture, that are available, and you could consistently use it, but it needs intense involvement, and it needs intense people work around it. So you need somebody who can focus only on culture, and that is not something that every organization can afford at multiple stages.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, because I think unless you measure,
yeah.
I mean, for example, if I can ask Priyanka, so how do you actually understand, I think people talk about cultural fit, right? Yeah. When you onboard somebody or you actually acquire talent today, how do you understand cultural fit from this? How do you even measure and say, okay, this person is fit or not?
Yeah, I think before I actually answer that, on the measurement part, right? So I was part of IBM, and as we all know, it's one of the oldest organizations. So before any employee went on site and in services, we used to mandate them. We had a tool called Culture Navigator. They had to mandatorily undergo a training for the region that they were actually going to go visit on site. And they had documents which outlined what were the non-negotiables of that culture and what was something that could be potentially accepted, what was basically red, amber, green for the employee. And that was beautiful, because sometimes I think, and I am telling you, I have myself been guilty of quite a few faux pas when I first went to the US, because I was staying with my American boss in her house. She very warmly welcomed me into her house, and I was using her house, and all of a sudden we went out for dinner, and then we realized I am not able to learn how to use the showers because it was very fancy, right? So I had to, and I was so embarrassed to go and walk up to her and ask. So I think regardless of the amount of training we do on ways of working, the negotiables, the non-negotiables, there is always going to be a softer aspect which we can't address, which the employee will have to figure it out on the run. But I think whatever we can do to enable the employee to get acclimatized. And another thing which I've recently observed is these Gen Zs, they have this, and especially with the advent of social media, there is a lot of cancel culture. Like, because, okay, this person did this, okay, let's cancel. And you will suddenly see a dip in their followers and all of that. So I think corporates also are now leveraging social media presence in a very heavy way. And especially to appeal to the younger demographic, right? Because, and GCCs, I'm sure all of us have experienced this, because our average age is roughly between 28 to 35. So we are looking at dealing with that culture. So building that empathy in them to be able to understand that it's okay for us to navigate through the maze of acceptance and coach them if required. Like so many people, and I think Indians are a very shining example of that, because I had an example where somebody walked into a temple with shoes, which is a non-negotiable for us. But the person who was taking this person to the temple very kindly requested them, sorry, this is not part of our culture, we want to pay respect, so if you could please leave your footwear. So I think we walk the talk through our actions. So measurement is very static, and I think to Meena's point, I think absolutely the unsaid measurements are more rampant than the said measurements, especially when it comes to culture.
Fair enough. So one of the things I think we all look at is psychological safety, right, among people, when especially in a cross-cultural, multicultural environment. So Jacob, now back to you. And what way can we actually, I think being vulnerable and feeling safe in an organization, both are equally important, right? So when you feel safe psychologically, I guess you get the best out of talent in a way. So what are the measures have you actually done or things that you have actually experienced or put in place in your organization, if I may ask so, that have helped this?
It's a good topic. Psychological safety is a big word. Especially the youngsters talk a lot nowadays, right? And we have even come across instances where they are not agreeing with the
They must be telling us we are talking a lot now.
Yeah. Youngsters who join and the bosses, there's probably sometimes some differences that come. I don't feel psychologically safe to express myself, right? All of that are common words. But in TransUnion, we, when someone joins, and obviously you accumulate various ways of working and all when you work in multiple organizations, that's why we try to do induction. We have a buddy system to help them settle in and all of that. But one thing that we focus on is be you in TU. So TU is a short form of TransUnion, and be yourself in TU. So we have, like any Gen Z, we also try to make it small. So be you in TU is something that we believe in, because we believe creativity and innovation starts coming when you are on your own, right? When you are yourself in the system. You don't have to, become a different person at work. And that's the basis of even diversity, equity, and all of that. So for psychological safety, we have a lot of induction sessions where we start talking about it. And I spoke about our values and beliefs. And one of our beliefs is, I say what I need to say, right? So we have 6 beliefs, and most of what we do is aligned to that, right? It's there in our website and all of that. So I own it is one of it. And another one we say is, I say what I need to say. And we try emphasizing on some of these, especially with our colleagues in India. We call our not employees but associates, right? With our associates in India. And how we try doing it is, doesn't matter, we don't believe in hierarchy. You could be in calls with colleagues across the globe. But if you have an opinion, please say what you mean to say and try to create. So it's not easy. People do not open up fast. But as you start going through the system with multiple reinforcements, I think that has helped us with all of that. And there's a lot of listening sessions that we do, and we hear from our team members, especially the HR business partners and all of that, and we try to pick up groups of people who are 30 days in the system, 60 days in the system, 90 days, because that's when they are settling down, and then after a year and all of that in between. And some of these designing sessions, and let me tell you, the youngsters are quite open. They clearly say if they are not okay with something. Okay. So some of these are helping us, and obviously a lot of other actions like Voice of Associates, and talk about it freely in the workplace. And we talk about manager effectiveness, where a manager is not being controlling but being partnering with the team and all of that. So all of that, I believe most of the organizations have it, but we are all adapting to all of these, and things are evolving, but some of those tidbits that's working well for us, and keeping it simple but at the same time working well.
Fair enough. So I'll pick up a couple of words from what he actually mentioned. One is, is that bias? Very, I think we talked about it. Sahana, what would you think, how big a role does bias, and Neha, of course, accused me of reverse bias, right, when we started. And jokingly, I said, but how much of an impact does it have, and how do you address that as a part of a multicultural environment?
So I guess, especially within London Stock Exchange, when you look at it and you're working with teams across geographies, the challenge is, in terms of, if you're speaking about psychological safety, right? What's the role of the manager out here? And do they give that space where you openly go ahead and speak about your failures and say that, hey, celebrate those too, talk about that. Do you create that kind of a safe space to talk? That's the first question, right? And that's been one of our focus areas. And so we do go ahead and give that environment out there. But to just give a simple example to the group, right? Let's say, when you receive an email from your counterpart in another country, now the initial reaction from my end would be, okay, should I just go ahead and respond? This sounds rude to me. But if you just pause and just look, keep the emotions aside, and just look at the content again, and then go ahead in terms of collaboration, it just gets a different meaning, or maybe just talking to the individual to, understand what the person is. So I think it just goes to the basics of understanding folks on either sides and not jumping into conclusion from your cultural perspective. They might be bringing in another perspective. So just listen in, learn, and understand various perspectives.
Yeah, I think starts off with how we interpret no.
Yeah. Right. And at times maybe joke about it too. As a team, culturally diverse team, when all of us get together, what I love about the team is we make fun of each other. Yeah. And so it's not considered a taboo. If I say something wrong, they'll be like, hey, come on, you can't be, so
fairly,
you build that safe space.
So I think we'll, time is almost up, but then we'll have some more fun. One of the things that we have learned, I think, in our own journeys, as culturally diverse teams have also led to a lot of innovation, right? I think a prime example as a country itself is the US, where culturally diverse teams have shown success in terms of innovation. So I would like to have all of you actually one by one, maybe very quickly address how has diversity, cultural diversity helped innovation in your experience in your organizations?
Diversity combined with collaboration is innovation for us. In fact, just quickly in 10 seconds, in fact, when we were setting the shared services, I had to bring the work to India from South Asia. And they were very skeptical because obviously, in this whole process, each one of us have really gone through this. So then I really realized that if I go Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand one by one, I will take another 2 years and I miss the deadlines and probably lose job. So then really thought what to do. So then I really thought that here the cultural assimilation is very important. I just ensured, instead of we going and picking up the work and doing the whole KCKT stuff, eventually we call all of them here. They look at our offices, they look at what we are capable of, they look at everything. And then that worked magical. In fact, that's one of my learning across the whole, setting up the whole space. So I think these are the things which you said, just get little innovative and things eventually work.
Thanks, Nia.
I I think for me, it all starts with mindset, because coming from a neuroscience backdrop, everything starts with our thought process. How are you enabling them to understand India as a culture, a cultural land, or our culture as much as we understand them is the key. Second of all, I think, like, he mentioned, it's more of how do you allow for open participation to happen without fear. And if we can create spaces like that, whatever word you want to call, whether it's psychology, psychological safety or care, or the stability of basic humaneness, we are missing out on that. I think all of these combined together with collaboration, understanding the nuances of working will help us in innovation.
So I think I've done consulting for 6 years of my 18-year-old career, and I've been at the heart of a lot of mergers and acquisitions and cross-cultural. I've done 13 country transitions, like phase 1, Southeast Asia, phase 2, US, Europe. So various statutory limitations and all of that. So I think my exposure to culture is a little more intense than the rest. So I believe, however, one common theme that stands out across my tenure in consulting has been dealing and starting with two fundamental principles: operating with empathy, trying to temporarily put yourself in the shoes. And I think you shared a brilliant example, Sahana, of having the gut to respond instantaneously. But what I usually do when I'm like really pissed off at some mail, I will draft my response and save it in my drafts and send it the next day. And the next day when I've slept over it, I will change my response. So I think operating with empathy. And the second most important thing is, I think, research, reading up, and making sure that whoever is at the heart of that change realizes that their voice matters and they are treated with respect. So these are my bottom line takeaways.
Thanks, Priyanka.
Yeah. So we established our Chief Talent and Diversity Officer's office with our CEO's pledge in 2020. And after that, not just the CEO and his 1-2 downs from there, every leader has responsibility on diversity, and we measure it. And being an American organization, we also have a diversity report, which is published globally, being a public company, right? Listed company in the US. So, and also our environmental, sustainability report as well. So we take measurable focus and try to execute it throughout the year. And we can see that, for example, in India, our product in India is called TransUnion Sibyl, right, which is a credit bureau. And what we do is, basically, TransUnion has been doing this in the US for 65 years, probably a very Americanized way of the product. Picked it up, worked with engineers in India, customized it for it, and worked with all the people, taking everyone's consensus, which is diverse. And I can tell you, we have some of the most refined products used in the country right now. And now they are going to look at agriculture ranking as well, right? Bringing in how do we support. So when you break it down, the product, and see who did it, it's a cross-cultural team across India, US, and Africa, and all of that, bringing in, pooling their strength and building that. So I think we have many reports that has come up saying from BCG, McKinsey, that productivity and all of it, which is measurable from diversity, I think it's the way to go, having different opinions, but aligned to the same cause and solving a problem. And I think wonders happen. We see that in our daily lives, right? And if you are a little open to it, and we can tap into that innumerable energy is what we feel.
Thanks, Jacob. Sahana, you have the final word now.
The final word with the red.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, disagree, a little bit of disagreement, if I may. It's not that US is synonymous with innovation. Innovation happens across.
Well, that's an example.
As an example, okay.
Yeah.
So just to give an example out here, one of the previous organizations I worked for was DreamWorks Animation. And 70% of the movies were done out of India, right? And the team was quite diverse here because we had to get international talent to India. So we had artists from Europe, Asia, everyone working out of Bangalore. Now you could say that communication can be a concern or whatsoever, right? Different styles of working, etc. But this team delivered because it was the end customer in their mind. You know, it's like having, what does the customer think? And how do we deliver the best product out here or the best movie? So it was not a language barrier that got them together. It was the passion for delivering the best movie. So I think that is what we speak about culturally diverse team. in the end of the day.
I think Bangalore is a prime example of that, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Of a culturally diverse, I guess, audience here, for sure. So thanks a lot, all of you, ladies and gentlemen. I don't think we have time for questions, do we? We can take one? Okay.
Actually, I have two questions. One is on the hiring perspective. How do we assess the culture fit or the cultural addition? That is number one. Second one is, what are the best practices that we can do as a business when we are onboarding someone new to the organization, who's coming from a very different type of organizations? Thank you.
Yep. You want to take it, Pina?
Okay, I will take it. So I think when you look at, first of all, hiring, how do you align or how do you measure the fit is the question. And I think you can measure the fit, as I said, in an indirect way by ensuring that you have a behavioral event interview specifically on certain values or aspects that you want to consider. And the second question was about, I'm sorry I missed it.
So I would, for the second question, I guess it's about engagement.
So how do you onboard, right? Yeah. So onboarding again is it's the challenge with it that we have created for ourselves, like I was telling, earlier, was more about, as human beings, we have this tendency to complicate processes, no end. And then we find machinery or we find software solutions to simplify it. So the whole point is, how can you keep onboarding simple? If you look at 60 years back, our parents didn't have any onboarding, orientation. They work beautifully well in organizations. So it's a question of also relating to the place we are, but going also a couple of steps back to say, when I'm creating the process, do I wear the hat of simplicity and sustainability, or am I wearing the hat that it should look beautiful on paper and make the whole process complex? So I would say, if you want to assimilate, keep the process simple, keep the process sustainable, keep the process easy for people across cultures to understand by being cognizant of what should be there in it and what should not be there in it. That's the way I would probably do it.
Sahana wants to add.
Just to the second part, right, in terms of, just keep it simple in terms of care for this person who's coming to your team. I just read this yesterday in terms of, this particular manager who used to dial in to every call just to introduce this new person in the team, to give that safety net, to say that, hey, this person so-and-so has joined. And especially when you're working in a culturally diverse teams, globally diverse teams, just taking those minute steps and owning the onboarding or everything about your team, I think that makes a lot of difference out there.
Yeah, I would like to add, one of the things that we have seen as a provider of software to many, of course, multinational companies and enterprises, is one of the things that we have seen successful cultural assimilation happens from the time the candidate offer goes. From minus 90, we call it minus 90 to plus 180 in a way. So are you engaging with the candidate, right from the time the offer is gone in, at multiple touch points that you can build through the process till the time the person is onboarded and after. And I think that's a good measure to have to see how much we can actually assimilate that person. And this, he's aware, he's coming with eyes open, he or she is coming with eyes open on the day onboarding happens. And that's a, trend that we are seeing more and more enterprises adopting. So thanks a lot.
I'd just like to add one last thing. If you get a chance, please view a podcast which talks about the correlation of academic success in students to the competencies that they exhibit. And it is not academic excellence, it is grit. So I think if you can measure for grit and resilience, because life will throw all kinds of curveballs at you. So I usually using behavioral event interviewing techniques whenever I am assessing for culture fit, within my leadership team especially, and in this whole VUCA Bani dynamic that we are currently operating and moving goalposts every year on goals, I think even HR is sometimes unclear on what goals to be set for the leaders until 6 months have already passed. Yeah. So we definitely measure for resilience, flexibility and adaptability and learning on the go. And if you can assess these through targeted questions, I think more often than not you'll find a person who can make it through the journey. Thanks.
I think we learned a lot. I learned a lot from all of you. I think some of the quick learnings, of course, listen. I hope I listened a lot. Know it all to learn it all, I guess. Assimilation, I think I saw diversity 360, right, from Neha. And I think learning, empathy, and respect. I guess those were the key words I wrote down for the benefit of all of you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
And wish you all a good day going forward.
Thank you. Thanks to all the panelists and the moderator.
Thank you
Please
so
stay back
much
on the
for being a
stage.
wonderful moderator, Bharti. Thank you. I'll use this opportunity to thank him on behalf of all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
GCC Workplace Awards 2024, presenting partner LinkedIn, co-presenting partner Alive Health, initiative by Zyoin Group, in association with Brigade Group and Adrenaline, powered by WeWork, banking partner Axis Bank, knowledge partner CBRE, strategic partner KDEM, GCC partner Thalaron Global, gifting partner Chiari,